Welcome to the Solidity Insurance Group team call. My name is Marisa Maggio. Today is February 20th of 2025, and I'm really super excited to have our guest on the call today. We have somebody who's been with Family First Life for some time. I've had the opportunity to kind of know him from afar throughout the business, but also see him at so many different events. He's always showing up, always showing face, and really always just showing out for himself, his team, and making sure he gets it done. We have Easton Padden on the call with us today. Easton, how are you doing?
I could not possibly be better, Marisa. I'm very excited to be here. It's been a great day so far.
I bet it has, and I appreciate you being on and just taking the time out of your day. And now, Easton, for those people who don't know you or maybe haven't heard a whole lot from you just yet, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of what you were doing prior to Family First Life, how you got involved, and why you choose Family First Life.
So, professional redneck basically my entire life. I had all manual labor jobs literally forever. So I did like farming, ranching, roofing, landscaping, any physical labor job that you can think of, I probably dabbled a little bit in. So that's kind of like what I did growing up. I got my first full-time job actually when I was 12. That summer was my first gig. I wanted a new dirt bike, and my pops was like, "Sounds good. You better get a job because I'm not paying for that." So hard pass. And we found a local farmer that wanted some farm hands for a summer, and me and my buddy went and hopped on and did our 70 hours a week for $5 an hour. Still took out Social Security, which is unbelievable, but not holding it against him now. And so that's basically what I was doing all the way up until, like post college. And then I spent a little time after college, like pursuing the dream. I had an athletic dream that I was chasing down, and it was like 2 years from when I graduated to like first. It was an Olympic year in 2016, so I had like a couple of years to kind of see what that life was all about. And that went exactly for the most part how it was expected to go. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe I got a shot at going to the Olympic trials if everything goes perfectly. But after that, there's a zero chance I'm ever going to be a pro. And then pro track athletes make like probably 30 grand a year or less. So it was kind of like you know, I was never naive enough to think that that's what I was going to do for a living forever. So I was like, all right, well, I am out of college. Athletics has gone to where it's going to go. I need to make some money. I need a job. And so I had a couple of connections, made some phone calls, and my old college coach took over a D2 program in Colorado. And he was like, "Hey, you're not doing anything. Why don't you come down here and be an assistant coach? That's also about 10 grand a year." So I was like, "Also need a job because this is not an adult job, and I cannot quite literally feed myself on 10 G's a year and live anywhere." So I got a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and that was my very first exposure to like corporate business, inside and outside sales, kind of seeing, I mean, they were, I think at the time, probably doing like 27, 28 billion a year as a company. So it was a big, corporate organization. And I got a lot of good experience, and then also realized that they pay you no money, for a very long time. So it's, like the guys that were making 700 grand a year plus at that company were like 20 plus years in. And I was like, dang, that seems like a pretty long time to wait to make some life-changing, amount of money. And I was very bad at managing lazy employees. No offense to them. I love one of them is still one of my good buddies, and he is absolutely very aware that he did as close to zero as he could. So we just, we accept that. And so that's what I came here. I saw that there was like a contract sales job. I saw an ad on ZipRecruiter, which was how I found the company in the first place. And I basically sorted the jobs by like the highest income offers. And it was like medical device sales and then insurance. And I can't remember what the other ones were. But the ad was like, you could make 400 grand a year doing insurance. So I was like, intriguing, also probably not true, but I should at least interview to see what like this thing is all about. Because that seemed like an obnoxious amount of money, whether it was gross sales or not. Like that's a lot of sales. So whatever they were making, it seemed interesting. So did an interview with my buddy Josh, and then got promoted at the other company. So it took me, I registered for my insurance test, Marisa. It took me 15 months from the day that I registered for the exam to like actually go through. I renewed my own test like 8 times because it kept expiring because I kept promising I was going to do it and didn't do it. So if you guys ever hire somebody and they don't get their class done in 7 to 14 days, please be nice to them. That could be, me. And they were not mean to me. So I eventually came back and actually did my stuff and got my license, which was funny, unique part of that story was I'd already been looking at it for like obviously over a year. Um, and me and management, slight disagreement. Was very confused on, where the money was on the paychecks and like promotability wise, like getting passed on promotions with people performing less because they live closer to location. And I was like, this is whack. So short version, I got canned and I was like, well, there's no better time to figure out if I can do this or not and if this is a real thing. So my boss was awesome that had to fire me. He actually let me put in for like the rest of my time off, and he would call me when he was coming down to fire me. He's like, "Hey, go marketing or something this afternoon. I have to come down and can your ass today." And I was like, "Cool. I will be gone when you get here." So he bought me like an entire week to do my exam. So I did, my life and health exam. I knocked out in like 5 days. Took my test on day 7. Thankfully, they rounded up, I think, from like 69 and a half to 70 and allowed me to get my licenses. That was a very stressful part of the process. I feel like the licensing was the scariest initially. Finally got it done. And then I just randomly called back Josh Rose. And I was like, just got my license, dude. When do I start? And he was like, who is this? I was like, oh, I talked to you like over a year ago, but I would very much like to try the job. And so that is literally how I ended up landing at FFL. Um, I mean, virtually a coin toss of what insurance gig that I was going to land at. And, I talked to a handful of other things, but I saw a video of Sean on you. I was watching like all these FFL videos that Sean had cut early. And I was like, I don't know what this dude is about, but he seems like he legitimately wants to kill everybody from like he wants to win so unbelievably bad. I would like to be on that guy's team. And so that's like I was sold on a bunch of videos that Sean had cut of like this dude seems like so unbelievably serious about winning big and getting people paid. And I was like, it's really hard to find somebody running a large organization that is more interested in making sure that their people in their team are okay. And that was like a huge deciding factor on why I pursued here versus all the other stuff, that you can find when you're on the job hunt for sales. So that's like probably a little bit too long of a version of how I landed at FFL. But that's what drew me into here to begin with.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's a really cool story because also you start all the way back from when you're 12 years old, you want that dirt bike, and your dad's like, well, you're going to have to go work for it. And you did just that, right? And from the age of 12 to now, I think Easton, that showed just work ethic was absolutely there, right? Um, I love how you talked about corporate America and how that being kind of your first exposure, so to say, at enterprise. Because like we all have, I think it's important that we all get exposed at one point or another, whether it's you worked at a restaurant, you were at one point or another, you have to see what that corporate ladder looks like, in my opinion, to hate it, to be like, I don't want to wait 10 years to get promoted. Like, I need the money now. I want to work hard now. I want to do better than everybody around me now. Right. So I love that. And then also how you were like, the ad said 400 grand on it. I didn't really think I was going to make 400 grand, but like I figured, like what's the worst that's going to happen? You dragged for 15 months in terms of the pre-licensing. So that's like I'm gonna note that Easton, like don't count everybody out after 7 to 10 days. But once you did get your feet on the ground, you took it seriously. You got into your pre-licensing, you got licensed quickly and got started fast. That's fair to say.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
And
was
I think kind
locked
of
in.
what else you said too is like, hey, like I looked into other insurance companies, like by nature's default, like we're gonna do that, right? And you're like, I looked at everything and based off what I saw, it seemed like the passion or the want to help other people was really just very much here with Sean and with that leadership, so to say. So I love that, Easton. And now kind of coming into the business, everyone's going to come in differently, right? Some people hit the ground running. Some people are going to, be a little bit slower. Some people are, going to come in and start recruiting like crazy or just selling like crazy. Now, coming into the business, Easton, what was the biggest, like turn of events, if you will, that made you realize, like, I do want to build a business here?
Um, a multitude of things. I didn't want to do team stuff at all when I got here. I specifically came here to sell is whatever that limit was going to be for me and sell a bunch and only have to be in charge of me. I didn't want anyone telling me anything. Like, I don't have to be here at this time. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do Saturday and Sunday if I don't want. I get to make those decisions for myself. So I had a zero interest initially of ever managing anybody ever again because I disliked it so much. Being here, you don't actually have to micromanage people if they don't want to work because they're the ones that have to eat the result of their lack of ability to show up for themselves, I guess. If you're a bad W-2 employee to yourself, this is going to be a terrible place for you to work. You have to just treat this, like you have to clock in with somebody when you're new. But anyway, the building stuff kind of came my first 3 months in the business. I don't know if in history anymore because I think my guy, that's Jesse, that's on our team now, he might have even been worse than me. But for a very long time, I was the worst hired sales professional in our company's history, based on the money I put into leads, the schedule that I was running, and the lack of results I was also getting. So I did go through that 10-week phase of like they're turning off all my credit cards. Like I didn't have a way to get food, get gas, pay our mortgage. Like I thought we were going to live outside for a little bit and didn't have the heart to tell the wife. Well, she was my girlfriend at the time, which is even scarier for her, I'm sure. But I didn't tell her any of the stuff that was happening when I got started. I was just trying to like literally survive any way possible. And that was 2.5 months of total nightmare train wreck. Having that doubt of like, this might be the worst decision I've ever made. Now we're going to live outside because I was overconfident and thought I was going to be good at this. And now I'm not good at this. So I had that same sales cycle as a new agent. Marisa, the little tiny bit of credit that I would give myself is I never shared anything negative with anybody ever, no matter how shitty it was for me. Like Lindsay had no clue what I was going through when I was starting ever. Like I just told her I was getting a little bit better, had a good day, had some good sits. Like that was what I shared always. So I was very like forward focused, I guess, if you will. And I had a pretty nasty schedule, Marisa. I didn't take any days off for my first 90 days. Um, like it was a legitimate 7 day a week op. So after getting murdered for the first 6 days of the week, every single Sunday I would plug in addresses that were local on route for me on my phone, and I would door knock for 12 hours every single Sunday, begging for another sale to just break even enough to get some more leads and try again the next week. So I stuck to that schedule without missing for 90 straight days. And then, week 10, I kind of had a light bulb moment where I had these back-to-back days where I sold 15 grand. They paid me all that money in like literally 2 or 3 days after. And I was like, this is a real thing that people get paid here. This is nuts. It's finally happening to me. And I was so scared that I was going to forget what to do that I didn't take any days off for 3 years besides Christmas and Easter. So I was always worried about having that big reset where I woke up one morning and had to start day one again. And I was literally so scared of that happening to me that I didn't want to take any days off, which I know is not for everybody. That's just like where my brain was when I was getting this thing off the ground. The recruiting and stuff, Zach moved back from one of the Carolinas, wherever the heck he was, to Denver to open an office, which was like an hour and 20 minutes from me. So I was like, okay, this young weird guy that's a hammer is coming to Colorado. So I drove to the office, 2 days a week to go like basically annoy the shit out of him and tell him to teach me all this stuff. And he agreed to do that because I was willing to do like whatever extra stuff that not everyone else maybe wanted to do. So I got an unbelievable amount of support from like Zach and Wetmore and Killamet. Dom Rogers was a big help on the phone stuff. I connected with Andrew Taylor a bunch. He's the one that actually told me to quit because he thought I was bitching, which, super glad I didn't, by the way. But that was a good,
That sounds about right.
ego check. He was like, hey, if you're just going to call and complain and don't care about clients, you should absolutely quit and get a job. And then hung up the phone. So I was like, well, obviously I'm doing something incorrect. Andrew, I just called him for help and he said to immediately quit because I don't like people and don't care about them. So that was like oh, this is a compassion-based sale. I'm tracking. I totally got you. So I was reaching out to people that had no business helping me, like Mark Meat. Like I was calling everyone and I was like, here's the situation, Risa. I'm running 44 to 50 appointments a week, and I am literally barely selling like 1 to 3 policies a week. And I am going to have to live outside soon. Can you help me, please? And because I was, obviously, besides my conversation with Andrew, coming from a place of wanting to learn and working a bunch, I had an insane amount of support. And Zach kind of plugged me in with Killamet early, and we were on a call with him, and he was like, "Yeah, I couldn't be more grateful, for all the work to come to fruition. My manager bonus last month was 120 grand." I was like, I'm sorry, Mike. You said you got 120 grand as a bonus last month?" And he's like, "We got a big organization." Yes. And I was like,
Right.
"I don't know exactly what you're doing. I'm very interested in that part. That sounds like financial freedom to me." So that was a big, like, just knowing that somebody was doing it, and someone that when you talk, dude, he's just like this, kind of fluffy Southern dude that's super chill. And I'm like, this guy is building this enormous company, and one of the, like, just a super slow pace, relaxed. I'm like, I can do that. Like, I think that I can do that too. There should be no reason. Um, and so between like having the support from, Zach was building, he wanted to build something crazy big, and knowing that there was like a big financial ticket that you could like legitimately take care of everybody in your family with, that is what drew me initially, was money. And then obviously it becomes more, about watching people thrive as you get through and you start building, and you see, your first person that goes out and has their first $10,000 net month, and you get to literally watch their life unfold and change, and you were just a small part of introducing them to the company. That was like, that pretty much changed everything. Just introing one of my college buddies to the business, who went on to set the FFL record to Hall of Fame in 6 months, 480 grand from his contract date, writing his first policy, to breaking the company record. Somebody that I went to college with, I was like, okay, how many of these people are there out there that are itching for an adjustment or a new sales gig, that are willing to just absolutely put it on the line and get after it? That like changed my entire vision of the build. And the one big bailout that you guys can do, because I was terrified to hire also. I was so honest with everybody early. I was like, listen, this is what I found. I'm pretty shitty, to be honest. I don't really know what I'm technically doing yet. I'm just getting started. I've started to sell more, yes, but I can't train you guys how to do anything. I don't want to screw it up for you, and then you guys have to also live outside. So here's what I'm going to do. I am pretty good at booking appointments, Marisa. So I will teach you guys how to like line up a nasty schedule and like go over the lead flow and all that. Please do not ask me how to close. I still don't know how to do it. I feel like I just run enough appointments that I'm accidentally getting into people that feel bad for me, so they say yes anyway. And like, I just lived in that mentality for as long as I could get away with it, until my 12th month, I wrote 93 grand. And Zach was like, "Can you please stop telling people you don't know how to sell insurance? Because I'm very busy." And I was like, "That is fair. I will start learning how to train, because selling versus teaching is still a different skill set." So he forced me to get in that uncomfort zone. And that is when I started kind of taking over some of the training and development when I was doing my personal recruiting. But I shelled that shit off for almost a year before Zach was like, "Dude, stop. Stop telling people you're not good anymore, dude. You technically, you sell the most on our team. I really need your help actually training, because I also have other stuff to do." Which I felt like was very fair. So as long as you guys can get away with that, I just kept plugging people into people that were actually good and could train. And then that gave me the peace of mind where, dude, it's not, I already told you I'm bad. So please, you asked me for advice. I'm giving you a heads up. I'm not very good yet, but I can give you some stuff. And then, it did end up changing after about a year, where I felt a little bit more comfortable helping someone go from 10 to 20 to 30 to 50. But that was kind of like my secret weapon, was just plugging people in to better people that I trusted, that had major proof of concept. And so it allowed me to bring guys in and like start building a little bit of a smaller team, without me losing time when it came to like, I still also have to get paid. And so that was basically the whole transformation of me deciding, like, okay, so big money opportunities in insurance, love that. And then we can also help teach, train, and develop people how to make financial changes that will change everything for them. And like, that's the part that I became, I don't want to say addicted, but it was like I was always looking for the next person to get paid, because it was so cool to watch one of my buddies do it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's awesome how you're just really blatantly honest, Easton. Like, I came in, I just wanted to sell some insurance, make some money, and keep a roof over my head. And, like that was going to be good enough for me. But you committed to that first 90 days. Now that's huge, because we talk about in in any insurance like that 90-day madman cycle. Now you did that right from the jump, Easton, right? You were like, I'm going to give this thing 90 days. I'm going to give it all I got. I'm not going to go home to Lindsay and tell her negative things. I'm going to go home and just be like, hey, I had 4 sits, doing better, right, than I was the day before. I'm only going to share good news, essentially, is kind of what I'm hearing you say. And then when you did kind of start to hire, when Zach was out in Denver, you had kind of that assist, so to say, which is helpful, right? Having that person, you can be like, hey, and this question, and this question. But the cool thing I think, Easton, about Family First Life is like, if we look around, like we all have that assist. Now, it might not be in person with Zach Trudowski in Denver, Colorado. However, there's people on like within the company, guys. Everybody wants to help each other. I don't know that we can say that about every other IMO, FMO insurance company. Coming from somebody who's worked at other ones, it's just not that supportive. So, what I kind of hear you saying is you were kind of exposed to negative, some positive things about building where you had built up kind of like a negative or just really not important narrative in your brain of like, I'm just going to dabble here. But then you saw it change some people's lives and you were like, okay, if he can break the record, like what can he do? What about this guy that needs help? What about my guy over here? What about this girl, right? And becoming addicted to living in that moment of helping other people get paid. And I hear you on that, Easton, because like once you come in and you have money and the money's there and it's flowing, that's a beautiful thing. But it's another thing to be able to teach people how to do that. So I love that. And I also love how you talked about on Sundays, because I used to do the same thing, Easton. Guys, we were not always all virtual, right? Me and Easton were like in people's houses, like probably in the hood, Easton, if I had a guess, like, you had your days in the hood, right? Like I definitely did. Knocking on people's doors, you're like, hey, you filled this form out because we're not able to get them on the phone, or they just didn't put their phone number, or they sent a blank form back. Like, guys, I need you to kind of take that in, because I'm not saying that, Easton was like, walk into school in the snow with 2 feet of snow on the ground. But what I'm saying is, guys, we're picking up a phone. Like, I love you guys, but like, we're literally just picking up a phone. So on Sunday, when Easton used to set all his appointments into Road Warrior and go around and do all his door knocks and just try to get that extra sale, it's like, guys, all we have to do is sit down, pick up the phone, and call some people on Sunday to get that extra sale, right? So it's a transition of essentially like action. And I kind of took this out of context going from in the home to telesales, Easton, because I just wanted to sit there and do my appointments. I was like, oh, I got 6 for today. Then I was like, what's going on? It's like, you can't have 6 on telesales. It don't work, right? But really understanding that, hey, I have to bring it back to what I'm going to do. And I love how you brought up, hey, I connected with all these people. But Easton, you weren't just connecting with people and not applying it. You were connecting with people, taking their advice, applying it, and then moving to the next thing, so to say. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. The implementation, it literally felt like the slowest actual progress of all time when you're in it. Because you're like, dude, I'm on all the trainings, I'm working every day. I'm like, I'm trying to plug in, I'm calling everybody for help. And then, you go into the next house and immediately do the same stuff you were doing prior, which is it's no different in telesales. Like, hey, try setting up your appointment, with the intro why and the structure phase before you just, you start asking health questions. You have no idea why they want it yet. I was doing a similar concept of that face to face with people, and they would choose an option, and then I would ask if they were like certain that that's where they wanted to start. Like, hey, I just want to make sure you actually want to do this. And they're like, well, maybe I should think about it. And I'm like, God, dude, why do I keep doing this to myself? So like the implementation thing, it felt like I was so slow and terrible at it. But because I collapsed it into a small window, I just got in front of all that stuff, at a little bit quicker clip than some who drag out that same schedule for 6 to 12 months. I just was tired of being in that space. So I was like, I need to do something else. And that's when we were on the sales site. That's where we kind of uncovered like, there's 4 core tenets of every single sale. And like, once I put those on paper and then was like, hey, these are the 3 things I got to do no matter what. And then after that, it's basically like suitability and then presenting affordable stuff. That is what changed the consistency in the like average premium that I was selling and like the percentage that I was closing, which I will put in here because everyone wants to be this high percentage closer and not do the volume stuff first. So 2020 was my first full year. I wrote 780 grand of insurance that year, and my closing percentage was 43%. I was still horrid Fs across the board. Literally couldn't graduate with that kind of percentage. But I saw so many people, and then when I was in front of somebody that was like ready to go, I just took as much time as it took with no rush. And like that is when the numbers and from a volume standpoint changed. And then that the next year when I just technically I didn't hit it, which it's all good. I sold 940 that next year on less appointments because I was able to control that sales process more consistently. And I probably inched my closing stuff up to maybe like 60 or 70 on average. Still not good, by the way. That's nobody wants to like let everybody know they close 60%. I don't care at all. If as long as I get the result that I'm looking for, I'm not worried about what's your percentage. If you're in a good appointment, like there's no reason to hurry the process up. Like just love the one you're with concept and take what it takes to like understand the situation so you can provide the value. That's how you get those bigger premiums that everyone wants to know how to get, is just like taking time with the clients that are ready without rush.
And that's huge because I love how you talked about, okay, yes, we're going to master the basics quickly, but then also you put your thoughts onto paper. Like, hey, it's not that deep. These are these kind of, X amount of steps that I'm going to take through my sales process. But I love how you brought it back to the concept, like, love the one you're with. Like, if I was in a home, Easton, and I was sitting with, John and Mary, and they were like chilling, and they knew I was there for mortgage protection, which obviously they knew because I'm sitting in their house. At that point, it's like, I'm going to just listen to their story because I need to know why they need the insurance so I can solve the problem. But if I didn't listen, then I hear you, Easton. I was closing at like 20% because I'm just talking at them at that point, right? So, same thing on the phone, guys. Don't rush to the next appointment. Be present with the person that you're actually talking to. And I love how you so just like you're just like, oh, I wrote 780 at 43%. Like, guys, those are big numbers, dude. Like, take notes. Like 780 is not a game. 940 in a year on your own personal pen, that is not a game. Like, that's a Nintendo number, guys. Like, seriously, think about that. And all, Easton's saying is like, hey, I plugged into the system. I duplicated some things that people did. I did not make myself the magic, is what I'm also hearing, which I think is really, really important. And I just kept moving forward and never thought I was too good for anything, right? So, Easton, you've hit Hall of Fame on the phones, you've hit Hall of Fame in the home, you've hit Hall of Fame as an organization this year. Was this your first time?
This was our fourth year of doing Hall of Fame as a team.
Let's go. So, okay, like he's claimed pretty much all Hall of Fame outside of that annuity one, which Easton, if you wanted it, you probably would have got it. But hey, we'll see about that. But how committed have you been to your schedule outside of that first 90 days, Easton? Like, would you say pretty much when you wake up in the morning, you know what's going to happen that day?
Yeah, I've got a pretty locked in, schedule, routine, all that stuff. Adaptability to your calendar is huge too. Where like you write out a 30-day calendar and it's like I gotta stick to this. Dude, people's life change all the time. Like stuff comes up, whether it's sometimes it's personal, family, whatever issues you got going on. So having a 30-day, we used to write out a 90-day calendar plan, and by the time we got into month three, it was so different because so much had changed. So I was like, all right, that seems a little overkill. Let's take a step back and maybe do 30 at a time. So like that's kind of what I do at the beginning of every month or coming into the last, 3, 4, 5 days of the prior month. So like I'm about 5 days away from going in. I already have all of my annual calendar stuff written out of like all the major events that I have to do this year. And then I kind of take it, a month at a time as far as fine tuning what my schedule is going to look like. But that was, great advice that I got. And again, cannot stress enough. I have came up with a total of zero ideas ever. I have nothing creative that I have made or figured out. I have zero. I'm a very good professional thief, and I just share stuff that I found that works from other people that are significantly better, which most of them also stole. So we're in the best place to like legally steal stuff to help us make money. That probably sounds weird if that's the only part of the call that you catch, but
Well,
it never be
that,
about you ever. Like,
that
because
would be their fault,
any new
right?
ideas. People have been selling stuff for forever. So if you think you have a new sales idea, you probably unintentionally heard it somewhere, and it doesn't belong to you. And that was, a blessing of getting to work with the group that I work with is they were crystal clear over, I have got absolutely no new things to share with you. Here's what works from the people that have been great at sales, great in the industry, scale teams, whatever. We stole all this from them. Here's what we're implementing to impact our business. So I wanted to add that piece in there because that has been, um, I would say, a message delivered top down since I've been here, starting with Sean. Like, hey, the only new idea I had was to stop stealing money from agents. So I created a new comp grid and started a new company. And then everything else, he just took from other good people in business and implemented it here. And I was like, well, if Sean can say that, who is actually successful, I probably should not think that I have good ideas. Because most likely I stole them from someone else, or they're not good, and I should probably call first. So that's been huge for our organization, as far as like, drowning the personal ego where you start feeling a little too special, like you're freaking Steve Jobs or something. Dude, we didn't create anything. We just work
Yeah.
at a place that's been doing insurance for 200 years. So it's
Exactly.
should be a
Right. So
relief.
you're like, you're not the, even if you're on this call, you think you're the magic, like Easton's telling you, like, you're just not the magic. He appreciates you, but you're not the magic. And I think that that's huge. I love how you said that 30 days kind of sliding, right? Things are going to happen.
Yep.
Things are going to change. Like, you said the 90 days, and like, I'm with you on that. We don't know. By the third month, it looks like a whole new calendar, so to say. But guys, if you can keep moving and adjusting with that, that's what you have to do. But just hold yourself to a particular standard, just like Easton's saying that, hey, I didn't necessarily have any of these ideas. I copied them because I knew that they were working for other successful people, and now they're working for me. Guys, it's a copycat business. That's literally all this business is. That's what makes it fun. That's what also makes it boring at times, right? But keep the fun in it. Um, Now, when you're training agents, Easton, because you obviously have a lot of experience in training new agents, what's something that you feel like a lot of new agents miss or struggle with in like the actual sales process?
Well, the first piece is expectations. So I and it's, mostly due to my own fault. Like I had no idea what I was getting into when I got here. Zero clue on the difficulty and the challenges that this was going to bring, which is why I told literally all my friends to not work here. I was like, listen, I don't know what it's going to be like for you. This was my experience. It was horrid. Thank God I survived, but it did not go good for me. And if that happens to you, I don't know if you're going to quit or stay. So I don't want you to get into a bad situation without the right expectations and then come in here and get murdered like I did, not expecting to get murdered. So I just make sure everyone knows, like, dude, this is exactly how it went for me my first 2.5 months. It was the hardest point in my entire life, emotionally, financially, the self-doubt at an all-time high. Like, did I make a mistake? You will probably go through all that stuff too. If the only people that lose are the ones that quit, and that's in any business ever. And not trying to sound like a Instagram influencer or whatever, because I probably heard that on there also. But you cannot lose if you stick to a calendar and you never quit. As long as you're doing the other half of that, which is like, you still have to like do the work part. So if you're doing the work and you're showing up and you are coachable and you're willing to make changes and make those adjustments, you can't go out of business and hurt yourself if you just stay consistent, and are coachable. But it's probably going to be terrible for you and very, very hard, and you'll be very stressed. So, expectation piece, I'm very crystal clear with everyone that starts on how brutal it is to get started in an independent contracting world where we're an inventory-based company. So that's like day one stuff. The actual sales training process just kept it as super simple as we could. And then, over time, you can add, different technical things to your sale, I guess, if you will, to find money and learn how to move money and explain tax-free leverage against insurance, all that other stuff, that verbiage. You can learn that over time. In the beginning, I just need to know, how do I simply walk a client top down through without having to get into an objection war every single appointment every single time. So we went introduction, why, structure, close. That was like our four big bullet points. And then we made a little bit of an adjustment where, like, after you set the structure, then you're into the suitability phase, then you're into your presentation and numbers, and then you go in for like the close. So intro, why, structure, suitability, do your presentation, close the business. So those are like the top down simple steps to like getting an insurance policy in force. That intro for the credibility stuff, we do text, email, of our licenses right out of the gate. So you call them, you confirm the info, they're ready to roll. Hey, before we get too carried away, I'm going to shoot you over my state ID credentials so you know this is what I do, pass state and federal background checks, blah, blah, blah. So I'm giving them access to all my identification very early if we agree to have like a short appointment. So Obviously, that's on purpose so that we don't have to get into like, well, I don't even know you. Yeah, that's why I sent you the stuff, remember? Just look me up, dude. I'm really easy to find. And I also don't want to go to jail, so like you have all my ID stuff. And like that's probably something that I say on almost all of my sales calls is like, dude, I got to give you this. That way, something goes haywire, you're worried about doing illegal stuff, they will find me, put me in jail, and then I will not be able to do my job, which I like very much. So that's why you have it. So that credibility thing is something that we do in our intro. If you want to give credibility before you do numbers is the other good place. If you forget before you present numbers, then like, okay, and then just before we get into this section, I need to make sure you have my state credentials, and then you can send it at that point before you do digits. But they need to have it at some point because we're getting, license, social, bank, family information, all that stuff. So that's the intro piece. The why part is, big struggle early because it's uncomfortable. And that's where I had a 10-minute timer rule for myself where I forced myself to set a timer on my cell when I was in-house to ask 10 minutes of why understanding questions, and I would not move on until I had clear direction of where we were going to go with the appointment. So husband and wife, pretty straightforward. Is this for one or both of you? Isolating primary income loss or primary concern. I was very big on finding who's the primary in the house. You are obviously priority one. Love to help spouse out as well, but if you're not around and she lives outside, that's a big problem. Same thing if it's a kid. So if it's a child that's in state, out of state, whatever, like awesome. What do they do for work? They got kids, wife, family, the whole nine. I use that verbiage a lot, but I need understanding of what is the situation without it. So short version, going to be impossible for them to come up with 10, 20, 30 grand overnight if you're not around and then still like be able to provide for their family. Fair enough? Yes. Okay, cool. And same version of that when you have a spouse, there's always an income adjustment if they're married. Always. Always. Somebody's going to lose money when there's a death. So we have immediate value that we can provide. If nothing else, there's going to be an income discrepancy when there's a loss. This can step in for a multitude of ways, whether it's covering income, house, funeral, a combination of those things. I just need a direction that we're going to take the appointment and why it's important to you. And, kind of like have you guys had the discussion on what it looks like 6 to 12 months after you pass, like what the game plan is? And then you just kind of like leave it open for discussion because then they'll start telling you, oh, we haven't talked about it, or yeah, we have, which is why we're on the phone. But I'm trying to get them to tell me because telling is not selling. It was great advice I heard on a training when I was new. Um, this Haroon guy was like, yeah, telling is not selling. So if you're telling them why they need it, you already lost. So you need to posture your questions in a way to open up and let them tell you what value that they're missing. If they have some insurance, is it because it's not enough? They're looking for an add-on. Like, what's the situation? I need to have direction before I have an imaginary appointment where I'm just hoping they're going to buy something without reason to purchase. Has to be purpose behind purchase. Don't know who said that, but that was like a ding moment where I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, they have to have a reason to buy it. Probably should have that information early. So that's the why structure. Um, that's the why section, I'm sorry, of the appointment. This structure phase, Marisa, was I don't know if it was like the ultimate game changer, but that's just in the order of things that I like learned how to implement. That structure phase of just Marissa, my job is super Marisa. Gosh, I knew I was going to do that today. Marisa, my job is super easy. We basically underwrite for like 50 some insurance companies. It's state regulated, so it's literally all the same price within like, 2, 5, $10 a month or something. My job is to run through some eligibility questions and then help you shop around all these big companies to see who your lowest match is. Once I figure out the lowest company match, you're going to custom design your own plan and price. Once you have it set up how you want, all I'm going to do is send that to the insurance company to make sure that they give you a green light offer back for what you'd like to have. Does that sound easy enough?
Yeah.
Yes. Awesome. So now the client knows what's going to take place during the appointment. That I was so John Wetmore is so funny. I'll never forget this day where he was like, dude, why don't you just tell him what you're doing there? And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, just tell him you're going to ask them these questions, find a company, they're going to choose a plan, and you're going to do their application to make sure they get taken for what they want. And I was like, okay. Literally the next appointment, I just sat down with this lady. I was like, okay, so blah, 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 blah. My job's easy. I'm gonna find a cheap company. You're gonna pick a plan, and then I'm gonna send it to the insurance company so you can get insurance. And she's like, okay. I was like, she just said yes. I think I just sold something early for the first time ever. And I was like,
Right.
I called John literally right after. I was like, dude, she literally said yes. I told her what we are going to do and she agreed. She didn't even know what the cost was yet. And she said yes. And I was like losing it because I couldn't believe that it worked. And he's like, do you think I was making that up for my health? I was like, well, no, it seemed very forward. And he's like, they asked you for insurance. And then you went to their house and now you're being weird about how to get them insurance. I was like, that's a good point. I will not do that anymore. So that structure piece of my appointments where I was just letting them know this is the process to get insurance, I started like not having a ton of objections anymore because I had credibility. I understood why they needed it. And then I let them know this is the process today. And I was like, those three things are what changed the trajectory of my entire career. It just took 10 weeks to put all that stuff together. So we preach that non-stop. If you suck at everything else, um, just do these three things when you get clients on the phone, and that'll increase your percentage of closes unintentionally by just giving them credibility, direction, and structure. And I was like, okay, so that is what we do. It can be super simple. Here's my ID to make you sure you know I'm legal. Usually people are looking for something small, 20, 30, 40 grand. Is that you or is it something else? Then you have follow-up question about who's in charge when they pass. And then my job's super easy. We shop around. I find a company. You pick your plan and price. I just send it in to make sure they take you. Does that sound good? Those are the three cores you cannot miss. All the other stuff that happens after that is placement and budget. That's what your job is as an agent, is to get that information from them so that we can help you get them placed correctly. But you have to do those first three things non-negotiable in every single house. The rest of it is just uncovering. I'm big on the soft budget stuff. Some people in our group, they don't even do that. Still sell 60 a month, so I don't, I just let them do whatever they want. That's the rules. But I can't go through an appointment without having a baseline understanding of their financials because I don't want to get into like I can't afford that situation without me being able to go back and go, actually, remember when we went through the budget stuff? Am I missing anything here, or do you still have 1,200 left at the end of the month? Because this is $100, so I know you can afford it, you just not want to pay. And then we can like get to the root of, do you not want to pay or did I miss something? Like,
Right.
or do you not trust me, or did I do a bad job? Like, there's something that I am missing if I'm getting pushback at the end of these appointments.
Absolutely. And I think really, Easton, what you just beautifully laid out, by the way, was like essentially how do we be proactive and not reactive, right? Like it's probably very rare at this point at the end of a presentation that you go through and somebody's like, oh, I got to think about it. Like, and if they do, you're probably like, what? Like what are we talking about, right? Because you established your credibility, right on the front end. That's huge. It's so important. I love how you said that, like, do that before you're doing any application or asking them for any personal information. And also focus on income. Like, guys, loss of income is going to be huge. Like, just like Easton saying, if people are married, if somebody passes away, somebody's income's going to change, period. End of story. And then the why, pulling out the why. I love how you said you challenged yourself to stay there for 10 minutes and probably be quite a bit uncomfortable in the beginning, right? Like,
I ran out of
I
questions
know,
in 2 minutes. Then I had to sit there and re-ask the same ones for 8. It was very uncomfortable for them too.
right. But they answered you, right? And they were able to, and they felt it, right? At that point, you're not selling. It's just you're like, okay, you told me this, right? Like you told me
Yep.
you can't stay in the house. Like you told me you can't afford the final expenses. That's what you told me, right? So I love that. And then the process of just like, so credibility, pull up the why, process, right? Hey, we're going to get you the lowest match. You're taking all the objections off of the table. And when we can do that, guys, it's very rare that you're going to get a rebuttal at the end because, as Trey Honeycutt would say, they're not at home making a list of rebuttals to come give to the insurance agents. They're just, there's only a couple we're going to get, guys. Like, that's it. And once you can master those, just like Easton saying, hey, it was a long 10 weeks that I had to do to figure this thing out. But once I figured this thing out, like, he was rolling his first year, he 780, right? Like, that's crazy, guys. Like, where else are you going to go and do that after 10 weeks of training? Those 10 weeks probably were terrible for you, Easton, felt terrible. However, you probably love thinking back to those 10 weeks now because you're looking at where you are now and kind of the gap in between where you were then and where you are now in your business. And that's amazing. So I love to hear it. And then one last thing I just kind of want to end with is, sometimes we can bring the wrong people into our organizations, right, Easton? Like that's definitely happened to me at times. but we try to do a better job of not doing that. Um, for you, what are some of the things that like you're absolutely not a good fit for Easton's team if you can't do ABC?
Um, Most of it is just commitment to a part-time or a full-time schedule. Like, hey, if you want to do this part-time, I'm not opposed to that at all. But we need to set up a part-time calendar that you are going to basically overwork yourself for a few months while you learn if this is a good fit or if you can create enough income to exit the job. And now you're losing money by only doing this part-time. We just have to have a game plan that you stick to. If that's evenings a few days a week and Saturday and Sunday, you have to be willing to commit to that piece. And I hate to not give people an opportunity to see what they're made of. But I need to know that they're going to be bought in on themselves, which means like I'm upfront. It's a leads-based company. Like that's our system. I know that it's not for everybody, and I'm well aware that it's very, very scary. But if you're not shoulder to shoulder in office working with us 12 hours a day, lead assist programs don't work very well. If they're not in a 24/7 office setting where they can go to multiple different closers and get the support they're looking for in office, that's when it works really well. Um, the virtual around the country and like doing like lead feed programs to people, and then it's really hard to keep them accountable. Um, that part's pretty tough for me. So I really am looking for whether it's part-time or full-time, just like I just need commitment on the calendar. And then as long as you show up and let me know what you need help with, and you're doing like the stuff that you need to do in the time that you're allowed to work with your current calendar, then I will be all in to get back to you as much as I can possibly help you. Um, but if you show up once every 3 weeks and like demand that I get on the phone with you like ASAP, that doesn't make sense for either of us because, I've got a bunch of other stuff to do too. And then you're just like super spotty. It's not a good business relationship for us. You can't, you know, take. And then like when you do decide to show up, like now I'm forced to do this or you're going to quit. I would rather you just don't start until you're in a position where that makes sense for you. So I do want people to be no less than 500 bucks that they're willing to throw into their first batch of leads. And our goal is to go, 500, 750, 1,000, 1,250, 1,500. If you start being a top producer, 2 grand a week. But we need to get you in the door with enough volume you have a chance to flip. And so like that 500, it's so risky to do less than that because you have less shots and no skills. So like if you want to go get $50 worth of leads, don't do that. Just keep your money, keep working your job until you set aside 500, and then we're going to take that 500, we're going to put it into this. You show up every single night, 5 days a week, and on Saturday with me, and you go over for the week, but you did all this stuff. I'm totally down to get your next batch of leads and help you, but you have to do these things in order for me to have buy-in on you. So like there has to be an exchange for us. So that's pretty much how I do all of like the upfront conversations. Just expectations of how brutal this freaking thing is. When you're getting beat up, like I need you to understand how hard it's going to be, and then uh, I let them know it's not for everybody. Like this is not a how do I make 500 grand this year, working 13 hours a week. You will definitely have to live outside if that's you. Like I don't want that for you either. Like you got a family. Um, People that have families in that situation, it terrifies me that they just want to drop their career where they have income that they need to support and just take a gamble on this because I don't know if they're willing to show up and get through the hard stuff or not yet. So I'd rather intro them into it on a part-time basis so they get exposure to what it's actually like to be a contractor in an inventory-based system. And then, we'll just maybe it takes you 30 days because you are a maniac and you learn fast, whatever. Dude, Eric Schmidt took 90 days working 70 hours a week at a car dealership while also selling 30 grand a month in insurance part-time. If you do that, like that's a very good plan. Not everybody is willing to do 70 hours a week and then another, 20 or 30 doing insurance. So that's where I really don't want people to get hurt. So I want them to be a little scared and like know that it's going to require commitment and there's always risk when you get into business. So that's like expectations of what I'm looking for people to work with.
I love that. I love how you're just brutally honest. Hey, it's like, this might be like the most brutal time getting started, but like this is what it's going to look like and just blatantly honest, which is beautiful. And then they have to stick to their schedule and you're following with them as long as they do what they say they're going to do. And they need to believe in themselves enough to spend $500, to invest into leads going into this thing. And I think that that's huge, Easton, because it's like, hey, like if I'm not willing to spend $500 on myself, why should somebody else be willing to spend it on me? It doesn't really make sense, right? Until I show up for the practices, I'm getting things done, I'm trying to figure it out. Okay, cool, we can talk then. But guys, buying leads for everybody, I've never seen like this crazy agent come from somebody buying them leads. It's typically the other way around. That agent wants to be in control because that's just who they are by nature. They're just taking this thing and running with it, and they don't want people to buy them leads. So right now, like if you're in a predicament where you're like, just like Easton just said, I got $50 to spend on leads, or I got nothing. Wait till you have 500, come back and let's get this thing done. But until then, like, we love you, but there's just really not a conversation to be had. Easton, this was absolutely amazing. You hit on everything from top to bottom on both recruiting and sales. So I couldn't have asked for, a better call. I appreciate you always just being honest, upfront in yourself. Thank you so much for your time and being on. And last thing to wrap up, Easton, what are your goals going into 2025?
So we have tiers of goals in our team. So you've got like worst case scenario, this thing sucks and I do a bad job this year. Like there's no way that we miss 6 million a month in December. So we want to go from 2 to 6 this year. If I screw this up really, really bad and somehow don't get to that number, like that's our drop dead minimum goal. A fantastic move for us would be very achievable, going to require an insane amount of work is 8.5 in December. And then you know, if we catch a team that I'm, working on behind the scenes and like we end up being able to do a partnership with the company, be really strange if we miss 11.5. Like that's our, quote unquote, fuck you goal. Sorry for the swearing.
No, I
But
like that. I love that. And
drop dead
no
minimum,
doubt,
something that's going to require an insane amount of work to get to. And then like, hey, we could get a little bit lucky. And yeah, if this thing works out, like we could technically catch 11.5 in December. So that's our big number that we're chasing. I would be happy that we did 8.5 and then like disappointed that we didn't get our FU goal down, but like that's how we tier out our goal system. And then if we catch some groups early and then maybe we're at, 6 or 7 by June, July, August or something, I'm just going to adjust it. So now I got to chase down 13 by December if this stuff happens faster. So all that stuff's adjustable, but that's the game plan by the end of the year.
I love that. And you got your worst case scenario and then you got your FU goal. And I love that FU goal. I'm rooting for you guys. No doubt you guys are going to far surpass that 11.5 in December. Easton, I appreciate you and your time. Thank you so much for being on with us.
Yeah, you guys are awesome, and you guys are so fortunate to have like Rami and Marisa having your back. They're both complete monsters. I've known you guys for a while, been great business partners of mine. So hope your team knows how lucky they are to get to work with you too. And thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, Easton. We appreciate you. Take care.